So very quickly, and you all know the figures, we had almost 300 participants, 200 and I think 87 or 97 from about 74 countries. Here you can see some of the participants sitting in the plenary from different constituencies. You see here research and learning, private sector, ESAs, countries participating. The meeting, as you know, was opened by His Excellency, the President of Costa Rica, who quoting one of his professors, said that shit matters. And we will have more on his presentation and on that session in the sector ministers meetings report, which is basically finalized. We are just waiting for a quote from Kevin Rudd, or not a quote, I'm sorry, an introduction by Kevin Rudd. Then, as you know, we had 24 ministerial dialogues on 3 different topics. You know that there were 8 ministerial dialogues in parallel each time on each one of the topics. Here we see Minister Tengbeh and other colleagues. And of course, what we heard in the feedback forms that were filled in was that people liked the ministerial dialogues a lot, that they also used the meeting for networking. Within constituencies, you see the private sector hugging, not hugging above, in one of the pictures above, but you also see people from different constituencies mingling, discussing, and networking. There was a comment that it was maybe this was the first high-level meeting with such a big number of women taking part in plenaries. So this was the initiative of Sitali to put together this slide, and the next one showing women in action, which I think is something very inspiring, especially when we talk about a sector that is very technical and that up until recently was strongly dominated by men. So it shows things might be changing. Okay, now regarding outcomes and follow-up actions on the meeting, I will not spend much time on this. I would just like to recall very briefly what the objectives were that you had set for the meeting. As you know, we had a high-level political dialogue working group that was co-chaired by DFID and Costa Rica, by Yamileta Astorga and by Paul Devril, who is now on the call. And the working group, which was a multi-stakeholder working group and multi-constituency and etc., set for objectives to provide a high-level platform for decision makers to hold themselves accountable for progress towards the water and sanitation and hygiene targets of the SDGs. Number 2, to take stock of progress, identify difficulties, as well as ways to overcome them. Number 3, catalyze progress by providing a forum for peer review for mutual accountability. And at last but not least, to increase momentum behind national cycles of sector planning, monitoring, and review. So basically, these were the 4 objectives. And of course, you all know, I don't have to repeat because you see the logo saying leave no one behind all over the place. The underlying objective was to increase awareness on the concept of leaving no one behind, eliminating inequalities, and what the links are between leaving no one behind and water, sanitation, and hygiene, and how this has an impact for leadership, partnership, planning, and financing. Good. Again, we did this picture. We took this picture at the very end of the meeting. Some ministers were not able to join, so here you will not see everyone. But we had 53 ministerial level participants from 74 countries. I had told you already. Something that I was particularly happy about was the huge number of participants in the preparatory process, 350, which means we had more people in the preparatory process than in Costa Rica, which is interesting. This is number one. Number two, we had 47 governments and 18 global organizations, as well as other types of organizations tabling more than 300 commitments. During the meeting itself, there were over 150 connections to the live sessions. It means that we had at least 150 people listening in and looking and viewing into the meeting, and something that I think was very important, and I think in the Secretariat we are very happy about, is the fact that for the first time we had ministerial dialogues. I mean, all ministerial dialogues conducted in the three languages, French, Spanish, and English. And I think it made, for me, one of my dreams come true, to sit people together from different regions, to sit the ministers, but also the other stakeholders together and have this cross-regional, besides the cross-constituency exchanges. Very quickly, the discussions were on the issues that you see here. I think that you all remember might remember the agenda, the status of the sector in terms of eliminating inequalities, discussing what it takes to eliminate inequalities, looking at the building blocks, then a discussion about the mutual accountability mechanism and how it was evolving, and the problems, of course. Then a discussion on what drives real progress. We were looking at transparency, also at integrity. We looked at regulation, at political will and leadership. And then finally, we had a plenary looking back at what we had learned and at what we do next. In the ministerial dialogues, you also know that the first one was on taking stock of progress. The second one on financing strategies to leave no one behind. And the last one on partnership in practice, how to get the most from sector collaboration. And there is another thing I would like to say that I think made people really excited about the meeting, and I only realized it after the meeting, which was the fact that everyone felt that she or he were part of the meeting. Everyone contributed to the meeting, and we had a decentralized and participatory mechanism for defining the content of the plenary sessions and who was going to speak, what were the key messages, and the same applied to the ministerial dialogues. And in that regard, I think that the high-level political dialogue working group had a very important role, or a key role, or the major role in making sure that everyone felt comfortable with the agenda and with the messages and the speakers and etc., and that this was truly a partnership meeting. Good. Not a partnership meeting in our sense, an SMM, a ministerial meeting organized by partners and for partners. Good. Some of the key topics that came out of the discussions were issues related to leadership, how leadership is indispensable for everything, for planning, for resource mobilization, resource allocation, and also for capacity. The importance of planning, of monitoring, of review, which are all central if we want to make sure that we include and prioritize the furthest behind first. We put them first. Also, regulation, I remember, was a big discussion also in the plenaries. Finance, for example, we discussed about the importance of finance strategies that are appropriate to make SDG 6 become a reality and are then also duly implemented. Also, the discussion about partnership, that working in partnership is harder. It sometimes, well, it takes more time, it is more difficult, but at the end, it's necessary, it gives better results, it's more inclusive, obviously, and more sustainable. There were also big discussions about data, and this is something that also happened at the Latino Sun conference, which, as you know, took place just before our meeting. The importance of quality data, right? Data that is complete, that is accurate, and that is timely. The importance of communication and of communication of data, and the use of data, all of this for decision making. And another thing were the topics of climate change and resilience. We heard very strongly from several partners that climate change and resilience need to be factored in our approaches. So this is something that partners told us. SWA, you should be working more on this crucial topic. As you know, Kevin Rudd, our high-level chair, made a call to action that was shared with you and is on the website, composed of 5 topics. He called on everyone to realize, to fulfill, he said, all their human rights obligations, if we are talking about governments, or responsibilities, if we are talking about non-state state actors. This is number 1. Number 2, identify the people who have been left behind. So this is the first step, right? Identify, understand who they are, where they live, which language do they speak, and then assess how to address their needs and their rights. Number 3, establish systems that integrate laws, strong regulatory frameworks, policies, institutions that can ensure governments and partners are able to deliver for all. Ahead of the 2020 SMM, develop financing strategies for water and sanitation for all, specifically for those identified as the most marginalized, and at last but not least, be courageous and take risks. Investment in sanitation and water for all will pay off for the population. Good. Now, if you allow me, we would now move to another moment of this webinar, and I would call on the Honorable Minister Jonathan Tengbeh, Minister of Water Resources from Sierra Leone, to kindly make an intervention. Your Excellency, thank you so much for having been with us in Costa Rica, in San Jose, and for having participated so actively at the meeting. It will be a pleasure to listen to you now. I hope that your sound problem has been solved. And I am Catarina Albuquerque. I'm sorry I didn't introduce myself. Your Excellency, the Honorable Jonathan Tengbeh, is the sound problem solved? Would you be able to take the floor?
Hello? Hello,
Yes.
Are you hearing me now? Yes. Okay, fantastic.
Yes.
Thank you very much for inviting me to make a statement here. It's going to be very brief and short. First of all, I want to start with a reflection on this, on the conference. It was fantastic, and I will really want to talk about the structure. The structure was good in terms of the plenary as well. The discussions on the plenary were directly related to the discussions that were held in the minister sessions, and ministers were given more opportunities to express their views about what is going on in the wash sector in their countries, which was very fantastic. So we came out of it with fantastic memories, good policies, good advice that speaks to our policies, and we are, as a country, we are working now to implement some of those key policy statements and policy issues that we believe will help us drive the wash sector forward. If I can move forward to what I took away from the conference, there were two major experiences. Yeah, if I had two major experiences that really was very, very key to us. One was the Ethiopian One Wash program, particularly with special reference to the unified funding mechanism that they set up for WASH. We have put together already put together a paper for that and a concept in terms of how we are going to move that forward. We have taken contact with Ethiopia, the Minister of Water Resources in Ethiopia, and we are planning to visit his country to have more information and more ideas about how to implement that One Wash program in Sierra Leone. The next one will have been will be the Ghana experience. We are having serious constraints in the rural water supply and sanitation systems. So discussion of the Ghana experience by the Minister of Water Resources in Ghana was very impressive, and I will shortly be taking contact with her to be able to have a platform that will be able to address our water needs. What is the background of all this for Sierra Leone? We at the moment have a lack of harmonization in project and donor funds, project implementation that is largely based on project approach, which has led to large transaction costs on the part of government. And that does not give government the opportunity to take advantage of the economies of scale. So if we have, we're planning a donor conference shortly, a roundtable conference, and we'll start to discuss this together with the experience that we will have from Ethiopia. We also want to address the weak coordination between the government, departments and agencies in WASH and other stakeholders that currently a bit disjointed. So these experiences will be able to bring together everyone in a very much coordinated manner. We also there is lack of sector-wide project design approach and implementation. Our regulatory framework is being looked at very seriously within the framework of discussions we had with at the conference. We will be feeding into the what we have here, produced here, as produce a few regulations in terms of water supply needs, and also regulations for the use of bottled and sachet water, and we'll move into actually regulations on sanitation as well. And this framework will actually be modified to take into consideration some of the things that were raised in the conference. We've at the moment there are separate strategic plans for our ministry and also the Ministry of Health and Sanitation and the Ministry of Secondary Education and Ministry of Local Government. These are all WASH-related ministries. So we are trying to take leadership as a ministry to bring all the other ministries that are operating in WASH to have a coordinated manner. Local councils are very much involved in Sierra Leone in the implementation of WASH, especially in rural areas. So this is where the Ghana experience will speak to the local councils. So we are also planning to look at those experiences that we gain from the conference to be able to address some of these issues that have been raised. So in brief, Katharina, this is basically, unless you want me to talk about the outcomes that
thank you so much
of the sector. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Minister. It was very inspiring and also, I think, yes, very inspiring and gratifying. That's the word I was looking for. To hear, well, not only that you enjoyed the meeting, but also that you took some very concrete takeaways, that you have some very concrete takeaways from the meeting that will enable Sierra Leone to make progress on certain issues, as you were mentioning, the Ethiopian one wash program, and then the rural provision of service provision, that you are getting inspiration from Ghana. So this is very good, and of course from our side, from SWA's side, we are more than happy to put you in touch with other countries or organizations that you came into contact with during the meeting, if you have any particular requests. So before I open up the floor for questions from the participants, I would like to ask if the Honorable Minister Chelugi, if the Honorable Chelugi, the Cabinet Secretary of Water and Sanitation from Kenya, is on this call. He had said he would be, but we don't see his connection. So I'm just double checking whether the Honorable Chelugi is here. Sorry? He is? I'm sorry. Can you say that again?
No, Katerina, the line that we used to test is not here. It's not connected, so I think he's not here. However, if there's anybody who, if he might have changed the line now, would just appreciate if he could send a message so we can know. But otherwise, I think we could move on.
Okay. Since we are very tight on time, and in order not to make you wait longer, of course, we are very sorry that the Honorable Chelugi from Kenya has not made it to this webinar. And I would open the floor to those of you who might wish to address any questions or make any comments in respect to the intervention of the Honorable Mr. Jonathan Tengbeh from Sierra Leone. Is there anyone wishing to take the floor?
Paul says he has a comment.
Yes.
Okay, so this is Paul Deverell. I work for DFID. I'm based in the UK. I was just reflecting on what Dr. Tengbeh has just said about the Ethiopia program, and just to highlight the fact that I'm aware that at least two other countries, Nigeria and Pakistan, were also very interested to find out more about Ethiopia's One Wash program. And I'm just, in my head, I'm wondering if SWA has a role to play to facilitate that sort of interaction. There's obviously a lot of interest, also from Eritrea next door as well. They were also interested.
Thank you, Paul. Well, this is interesting.
Katerina,
yes,
I could add one thing, and thanks, Paul, for raising that, and thank you also, Honourable Minister, for sharing your intended actions. So we've already been in touch with the focal point from Sierra Leone, and they've been put in touch already with the focal point in Ethiopia. And as the minister from Sierra Leone mentioned, they in fact have already sent a letter to Minister Seleshi in Ethiopia with an intention to have this conversation get started as soon as possible. So we can follow up also with Pakistan and the other countries that you mentioned, Paul, and see if there's a way of maximizing on this opportunity, but also enabling the conversation to still happen with speed vis-a-vis the timeline that Sierra Leone has. But I think this is a good opportunity to know also of the interest from the other countries. Thank you.
Okay, good. Thank you so much, Sitali, for your comments. Any other comments or expressions of interest or questions from anyone here on the call?
Yeah, Katrina, this is from Nigeria.
Hi.
My name is Atabensin from the civil society.
Very good. Yes.
We want the Honorable Minister to clarify what he said about having strategic plan by different sector. Are those strategic plans related to WASH or the different or related concerning different issues?
Okay, thank you so much. Maybe if there are other, if there is any other question, maybe we bring, we lump two of them together, and then we give the floor to the Honourable Minister. Or if there are no questions, if there are no further questions. Oh, yes, there is somebody else.
Catalina.
Yes.
Catalina.
This is Kefa.
This is Kefa.
Yes.
Now, sorry first that. From our ministry, we didn't attend. That was quite unfortunate because we are chasing the presidential agenda in my country, and WASH forms part of the huge deliverable issues. But I am impressed with the discussion from the minister from Sierra Leone. My interest is not a concern. My interest is that what he was talking about is benefit from country to country. I would wish to. Are you with me?
Yes. Continue, Kefa, please.
His line has just dropped. I will call him back.
Okay. So in the meanwhile, while Sitali kindly calls back Kefa, maybe Honorable Minister Tengbeh, maybe you could answer the question that was raised by the Nigerian civil society representative on the type of strategic plans that you were referring to.
Yes, thank you very much, Katerina. Well, what I was referring to, as a Ministry of Water Resources, we have a strategic plan for water supply in the country. Mm-hmm. And the Ministry of Health and Sanitation also has their own strategic plan for health and sanitation. We have the Ministry of Basic Secondary and Secondary Education. They have strategic plan for WASH in schools. Exactly. We have the Ministry of Local Government having their own strategic plans for the rural areas. So what I was saying is that we cannot continue to operate on that disjointed basis. We need to harmonize those strategic plans so that we have a single direction. Mm-hmm. That is what I was thinking. I was saying that is the issue, and we can only do that very, very well if, for example, we have like the model that Ethiopia is using, the One WASH program. That is, everybody buys into it. And even if we have single fund, then everybody will dip into that fund as Ethiopia is doing to implement their own strategic plan. But there must be some point where we have some form of harmonization.
Thank you so much, Honorable Minister. That was very clear. Can I ask a follow-up question? And have you already discussed this issue, your idea of harmonizing all these strategic plans with your other colleagues that you referred to, as the Minister of Health or the Minister for Education or the Minister of, I think you said, Rural Development? And do they see this as something positive?
Yes, we have. In fact, we have been working on the roadmap together.
Wow.
Particularly the Ministry of Health and Sanitation and the Ministry of Local Government. We were working together on a strategic plan that is called the roadmap for the WASH sector, urban WASH. So that discussion is going on. The document is almost finalized, and we are going to take it to cabinet very shortly. So our cabinet, more of this harmonization will take place because all of them will be in cabinet and we will all agree. Whatever cabinet conclusion we come up with, we'll then speak to our strategic plan that we are developing as a ministry. We are doing the a new sector plan, which is on the way very shortly. But the roadmap is way ahead of that. It's now going to cabinet where we want to organize. But I'm leading that process, so I'll be presenting that to cabinet.
Okay. Very good. Thank you so much, and congratulations. This is really all advanced. And I agree that both the Ethiopian experience, but also the experience that you are having can be of significant interest to many of the countries, not only in your region, but I would say beyond. We have been discussing also with countries in Latin America about starting to plan and have an integrated plan for water and sanitation. And I think it would be interesting to put everyone in contact and even organize thematic webinars, a thematic webinar, for example, on this matter that could be multilingual so that we can share experiences from different regions. Okay, I will stop talking. Kefa, are you back on the webinar?
We were not successful, Katerina.
I'm so sorry. Okay. Is there anyone else wishing to ask another question or make a comment?
Yes, please. Harry Jackson, former manager of the Global Sanitation Fund. We have spent time. We've met a few times during my time at the Collaborative Council.
Exactly.
So my compliments to SWA to actually get decision makers together to think about how to deal with fragmentation in the sector. And as you know, that's part of the role of the Collaborative Council, is to actually get people to actually talk to each other and coordinate their planning and then coordinate their implementation. Please, I think that is a very important role that you can take, and I do hope that this message can be one of your key messages. Which, apart from all the other messages you have, I think it's a kind of a foundational one, getting people to work together. I have a question to you, just briefly. During my work on sanitation, very conscious of the need to leave no one behind, but I want to ask you to clarify that, because at one point you said in your introduction that you seek out the most marginalized and prioritize them as if you want to serve them first. My experience is you need to plan for them, you need to start programming for them, but you don't serve them first, because in fact, to promote sanitation and self-help water supply and all those other things that you want people to contribute to, then you actually need to mobilize the middle class, the opinion makers, the early adopters, and all those things, but just don't leave it at that. So did you mean that when you said, and have you examples of programs which have successfully started right at the bottom and then worked back up to serve other people?
Thank you so much, Barry. I'm happy. I'm happy to answer that this question. Is there anyone else wishing? I'm just afraid that we might be diverting ourselves a little bit. But is there anyone else wishing to ask something, say something? No. Good. Barry.
Now,
sorry.
I think quickly to the minister. The question is, I would wish to see a progressive way of where the ministers are going to discuss at the ministers level, especially in African region, to try to interest themselves in this area of sanitation and water as part of forming a voice to in the region, in the African region, and maybe even beyond. What does the minister from Sierra Leone buy that? Maybe we could just engage with these ministers in the sector ministries. Hello.
Thank you, Kefa.
Hello.
Yes, Kefa. Yes.
Okay.
Is this you? Yes, Kefa. Thank you so much. That was a question, right? at the end, the last part.
It is a question, and somehow it's just
A reflection.
I'm trying to sit negotiating with him to actually pass take the process ahead, something like that.
Can you say that again, the last part, Kefa, sorry?
I am trying to lobby the minister.
Ah!
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Kefa. Mr. Minister, do you have any reaction to our colleague, Dr. Ombacho from Kenya?
Yeah, my understanding is that he wants us to harmonize this not only within the country, but outside in the African region. Is that what I understood?
Sure.
Okay. So, well, I will think about it, because first of all, what I wanted to do is to get this through with the harmonization in Sierra Leone, and get it through with the Ethiopian ministry in terms of what they can, how they can support. So that success story, I'm sure, can be sold to others in terms of how we can all harmonize and speak with one voice in terms of WASH. Yes, it is a possibility, and we can work on it.
Thank you so much, Mr. Minister. I think that Barry Jackson has left. Sitali, can you see? Oh, I think we can see here.
I can. I'm still here.
Oh.
I just muted my microphone.
Oh, I'm sorry.
But Katerina, if you don't want to discuss my question, just leave it in the record of the minutes. Okay. Bye.
Okay. Now, Barry, I'm very happy to say one sentence about it. And actually, what I was saying was exactly what I think is correct, in the sense that during the MDG era, we saw a deepening gap. And if we continue to serve the low-hanging fruits first, we will never reach the most marginalized and vulnerable. And if we want, and I can share with you then bilaterally, if we want to reach universal access by 2030, we must now put the furthest behind first. And this applies to WASH, it applies across the board. I've been listening to the UN Secretary General, the Deputy Secretary General, everyone now bringing this language forward and making the case that we need to work differently, not prioritizing the lower-hanging fruits, but the others. Otherwise, the commitments that governments took to reach universal access in different areas will not become a reality. Okay, now I will stop. If you allow, so Mr. Minister, thank you so much for having been with us. Thank you so much for having been so generous with your time and for having answered the questions. Of course, you are welcome to continue here with us. And I will move to the next bit of the webinar. And the next bit of the webinar consists of a discussion with different stakeholders. And we have an external support agency, a civil society organization, a research and learning organization, and a private sector organization willing to take the floor. So I will first start with Paul Deverill, who already spoke from the FID, who was also the co-chair of the high-level political dialogue working group, and who must have gotten several dozens of gray hair over the last months because of our SMM. Paul, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you. I don't think I've got any more gray hairs because I thought the meeting itself ran relatively smoothly, and we were very encouraged. The UK was very encouraged by the level of participation of ministers and other stakeholders, with one exception, which I'll come back to. So the first point is that from a UK perspective, we were very encouraged by what we saw in terms of participation and the level of debate which it provided. So congratulations to SWA, in fact, for helping arrange that. That was very useful. There were just two in terms of the actual mechanics of the meeting. Well,
Okay.
we've discussed this. We've discussed this before, but in general, we thought that the plenaries were a little long and possibly too scripted. I think in the future we should put on stage fewer people who are able to address questions that they haven't actually seen before. But the ministerial dialogues were better, and although the quality of facilitation varied, of course I can't really say that because I was only in one or two of those dialogues, but that's what we've heard, and I think it's something for the Secretariat to consider. In terms of the two key points in terms of how we think about, the next meeting, whatever. The first thing, reflecting the fact that we have ministers even on this call, I would love to have a small panel of ministers of the appropriate sort to advise us before the meeting, to advise us on its design, so that the interaction doesn't just come afterwards. What did you think? But before, what would really work? And I think that's very important in the context of the finance ministers meeting, where in fact we would need a small number of finance ministers who are a different breed from WASH ministers, I believe, to help guide the development of how we approach the meeting. And the second thing is the one group which was not properly represented in the meeting was my own. There were very few bilateral donors present. Now, we failed to get a minister there, although we did our best. At that time in UK politics, we were running through ministers at 2 a week. So that was really quite difficult. But I was just thinking it would have been more effective for us, more effective for others attending the meeting to have more bilateral donors present. And we have to figure out what we can do to make sure they go at the appropriate level, not only for finance ministers meetings, but also for WASH sector ministers meetings, because they would, if they had gone, they would have basically learned a lot. And also for us, for the UK, we had very interesting bilateral conversations with countries, including some of the ones I've mentioned. We also participated in the meeting of the Sahel Alliance with the G5. So there were really good opportunities. We just need to get more bilateral donors to these events in the future. So I'll take any questions, but I'll rely on the chair to guide in that respect. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Paul. And maybe there is something that needs to be done about how we organize our meetings. And you were saying that that we should have a group of ministers ahead of the meetings to tell us, okay, what would they be interested in? We maybe should do the same with bilateral donors to understand what is it that would make you come and attend our meetings. So I will give the floor to the next speakers, and then if you agree, I would open up for questions. And thank you, Paul, for your comments. Kate, from Water for People, could you take the floor now and share some reflections with us? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Katarina. If people can hear me, just type something if you can't hear me in the box. Thanks so much for giving me this opportunity. Oh, thank you. It was really a great meeting. It was my first meeting, but I could see collaboration at its highest level. One key thing, which I think a number of people have mentioned, it was interesting to see the level of engagement from the ministers during the ministerial dialogues, outside, during the plenaries. You could actually see that they're engaged and they are taking their right position. So for us, like representing the Malawi CSOs, together with my other colleagues that were there, we did have felt a bit jealousy because we did not come with our minister. Not because of SWA arrangement, but because of our own politics that are happening now, because we have elections coming next Tuesday, so we couldn't, our minister couldn't attend. And now, as I said, one of the key things that was quite interesting was the Ethiopian One Wash, One program, national program. And while we were there, we were able even to get Minister Bekele's presentation, and we have it. And we've already planned that as soon as we have our ministers in place, Minister of Water, Minister of Health, we'll definitely arrange a meeting. We were able to get some messages from the advocacy messages as well, where we'll take them straight to the ministers when they're in position. The other thing we also noted or learned or found it more interesting for us was the engagement of the private sector constituency. So meeting David, meeting Nick at that meeting, it was quite encouraging for us, because we do have a grouping here, the SWA task force, that meet at national level. But we haven't had a lot of engagement with the private sector constituency. And that's one thing we are moving ahead. We would want to engage the private sector more and more. And we had a chance to talk to David, we had a chance to talk to Nick and see how we can do that. The other thing is that we've prepared our report, and we are going to share at the sector working group as well as at the SWA task force, which they've just been organized to happen soon after the elections. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Kate, for the very positive but also inspiring takeaways that you brought home from San Jose. And please do let us know. I say these things, and I might give you the impression that the capacity of our secretariat is unlimited. It is not unlimited, but I think that the secretariat is composed of a group of very hardworking and enthusiastic people who would be more than happy to give you support, put you in touch, and make sure that the things that you want to happen in Malawi do happen. And so please don't hesitate, Kate, to get back to us on some of the ideas that you just mentioned. Good. Since we have, yeah, thank you. Good. So since Irma is not had to leave because she's participating in another webinar in another language, I would immediately give the floor to Nicholas Igwe, who is representing the private sector. Nicholas, Nick, could you kindly take the floor and share some reflections with us?
Yeah, thank you so much, Katarina. My name is Nicholas. I'm representing the private sector in this presentation. But before I start, let me start by thanking the Executive Director of UNICEF, Henrietta Fore, who obviously has taken the lead in terms of finding ways on how UNICEF can partner with the global private sector in accelerating the WASH program. So for us at private sector, we are very much pleased with the preparatory process during the SMM. Number one is that it was more of a multi-stakeholders collaboration. Private sector got involved from the beginning to the ending of the program. And we really, really feel that that obviously has given us, more energy to work. Secondly, as well, we also feel that the Ministerial Dialogue was a very fantastic one. And we feel that SWA as a secretariat should also look into on how they can roll this in out regionally, not just once every 1 year or 2 years. We can start, doing that, because it's all about people coming together, discussing issues around, obviously, not just the SWA, framework, but around issues that concern that particular region, you'll find out that some regions obviously have specific challenges as compared to others. So the MD, the Ministerial Dialogue was a very nice one, and we're also very, very happy that the private sector got involved in most of them. And we have also formalized our commitments as private sector working group commitments, and we are also looking at how do we monitor our progresses. And this obviously we intend to present to the steering committee during our meeting in Germany in the next couple of weeks. So that obviously we're taking the issue of commitment very, very seriously. For us as private sector, we feel that it is not just to make a commitment, but how can we creatively follow up with the commitments and make sure that as private sector globally, we are able to contribute our own quota towards the achievement of the SDG 6. So that obviously will present in Germany. And one of the challenges that we have at the moment, and I'm happy that the Honorable Minister from Sierra Leone and Emma from Malawi is also pointing to that, is how do we have focal points in different countries. But most importantly is, again, the leadership, the government leadership. We sitting down here at the UNICEF office in Abuja is everybody here is still a multi-stakeholder thing here, because the CSO, they are here, the private sector I'm representing, the UNICEF, they are here. So what it means is the government can take leadership to say they need the private sector to get involved. We are trying our best. Vietnam obviously has approached us, so we are doing everything possible to assist them. So it should not just be private sector making efforts to go and have focal points in different countries. But I'm happy that Malawi is also taking a lead in identifying the critical roles of private sector in WASH by actually saying that they want us to assist as much as we can. So we want Sierra Leone to also, because during the presentation from the Minister of Sierra Leone, I did not hear where they feel that there is a role that private sector can play, or in their multi-stakeholders or collaboration approach. I didn't hear that. So it should come, from there. I think that was one of the key things that we took from Costa Rica. Strengthening the government, the leadership, the political, leadership, because everything must start from there, from whether it's guiding principles or collaborative behavior or building blocks. All of them has to do with the government taking that leadership. For them to understand that private sector plays critical roles, not just as innovation, technology. We also play critical, roles in creating financial models, strategies, just like how Katarina, mentioned. These are very key areas that private sector can just play in. We don't just look at just to bring in funds, but how can those funds can strategically be managed and implemented in such a way that we'll be able to have more projects, going on. So we want where, just like I said, where other stakeholders will emulate what UNICEF globally is doing, recognizing the roles of private, sector, and coming on board to also say, okay, how can we, work together? So we want to see more of CSO, private sector, collaboration. Want to see more of external support agency, possibly private sector, collaboration, and government, private sector, collaboration. We feel that with that, collaboration will be strengthened more to obviously deliver in our key commitments that we have already made and submitted during the SMM. And I think that is it for me, since I was asked to speak for 3 minutes. But if anybody has more questions during the, we'll be able to deal with the questions after this. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Nick, for your intervention. I think that several of the things that you said, and I'll mention two, would be very interesting for you and your, and other colleagues who agree with you, to bring forward in the discussions that we are starting to have about the new strategy. One of the things that you referred to was the importance of rolling out the ministerial dialogues at the regional level. I think it's something that I had heard already from you, and maybe from somebody else, but now I forgot. Is this something that we want to do starting next year? So I think this is something that should be put on the table as we discuss the next strategy. Another point that you made, which I think is very important, Okay, now I'm already influencing, I'm already giving my opinion, but the strong point that you made about the importance of multi-stakeholder engagement at the country level, and you said governments must lead, but this is a must. And sometimes there was a moment in a meeting we had in Mozambique that we defined SWA as a forum of national multi-stakeholder, no, a platform or a federation, that's how we call it, a federation of national multi-stakeholder forums. And I could not agree more with you that this is something that we really must make happen. And maybe there are ideas for how to bring this forward. Okay, I will stop here. Now I heard good news, I read good news, that the Honorable Minister, Mr. Simon Chelugi, the Cabinet Secretary of Water and Sanitation from Kenya, is on the webinar and able to talk. Your Excellency, we would be very pleased to listen to you and to share with us some of the reflections that you have after your participation at our meeting in Costa Rica. You have the floor, sir. Hello?
Hello? Sorry, Katarina. Olivia, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Can I call him?
Yes. So I thought, okay. So yes, you can call him, but Katarina, then I think we would have to continue because I thought that was they were together already.
Actually, this one is not audible. Can I give you another number?
Okay, Olivia, we'll continue on the side then. Katarina, thank you. We can continue.
Thank you so much, Sitali. Good. So, as you see, we are still having some technical issues. And since Irma will not join us, I open up the floor now to all of you. If you have any comments, any to make, questions to ask, or also any reflections to share. We have limited time because then we will have, we need some time for the second part of the webinar, where we have an interactive activity. Good. So, is anyone willing to take the floor? I see a comment from Marissa, our colleague Marissa, telling Nicholas that private sector engagement was a major topic of discussion on the webinar that we had earlier today for the Asia Pacific region. Paul Deverill from DFID saying that we need to collaborate with regional organizations and events to link this to regional dialogues, and he adds a comma and says maybe. Any other comments, takeaways, reflections, questions? Yes. Okay.
Clarissa, I just got a quick comment. It's Paul again.
Yes, my name is Katarina, but that's fine.
Oh, sorry. There we are. Old habit. Yeah. So Dennis Warner previously made a point with Barry Jackson about the priority, whether the serving the poor and vulnerable people needs to be the absolute priority, or if it needs to be a bit more structured than that. And I mean, I think the conclusion, just looking at the chat, is that this is something which would benefit from a debate, of maybe an electronic debate that SWA could broker. I mean, from our perspective, correctly identified the fact that the agenda for sustainable development calls on governments to reach the furthest, or those who have no access first. Back to you.
Thank you, Paul. And I hadn't seen the comments. I'm sorry. I didn't manage to, but now I saw it from Dennis. I think this is an excellent suggestion that we have, and I agree that. So I think this is an excellent suggestion that we will follow up on. I agree. It cannot be on this webinar, and let's do it in the future. Let's do it in the future. We will discuss it internally within the Secretariat, and we will propose a date and invite you all again. Okay?
Thanks.
Good. Thank you. Sitali, I hope that you are there and that you guide me now, because either I need to give the floor to Mr. Chalugi, or I give the floor to you to run the second part of the webinar.
Katarina, so we just called the minister directly, and I believe he's just responded. So I think you could introduce him to give his remarks.
Oh, excellent. So, Honorable Chalugi, it's excellent to have you with us. Please, could you kindly share with us your remarks?
Come again.
Hello? Honorable Chalugi.
Come again,
yes.
Please.
So, this is Katarina Albuquerque from SWA. So, welcome to our webinar.
Yes.
And please kindly share your comments, your reflections from the sector ministers meeting with us. We have several dozens of participants here on this webinar, and we are all eager to listen to you. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you very much. The meeting of sector ministers, which happened in Costa Rica between the 4th and the 5th, was such an eye-opener. For the first time, I was able to have a first-time engagement with those who deal with matters like my case every day. The sector ministers meeting, which was attended by over 53 ministers of the world, exposed me to challenges that they face and opportunities that they deal with every day. Further than that, I was also able to know some of the cases that sometimes are very challenging on my side, how others have made it simple and dealt with them. So in future, and even lessons that I learned from that engagement, was that this meeting should be encouraged. I was even suggesting that we should open a WhatsApp group that members or ministers can be able to post activities and events that they are engaged in for purposes of sharing and also information, which can even make our work easier. Because challenges are not unique, they are common, they are happening in one country and they could be happening in another country. So we can share experiences, we can share challenges, and we may be able to overcome our challenges much faster when we dialogue together, when we discuss together, and when we interact together. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your intervention and the remarks you made. I have to say that in the Secretariat, we loved your idea of setting up a WhatsApp group for sector ministers to discuss the issues that you refer to, the challenges, but then the experiences, the opportunities, etc. Thank you so much. Is there anyone who would like to make a quick comment or raise a quick question to the Honorable Mr. Simon Chalugi? Okay.
Katrina?
Yes. Is this you again, Kefa?
Come again, you said what?
Oh, Kefa, I did not understand what you said. Can you say that again? Hello?
Hello, I didn't get what you are saying. What is this?
Oh, I asked whether people had comments or questions to the Honorable Mr. Chalugi.
Okay.
I guess that many comments have already been made and questions have been raised. Honorable Chalugi, thank you so much. And as you know, we are pursuing the creation of the WhatsApp group just for ministers, not for nobody else, just for sector ministers.
Katarina, do you want to share also the comment Paul has put in the chat?
Which one? Oh, I'm not seeing it. I'm very sorry.
There's a lot to learn from Kenya regarding small town wash services.
Yeah, maybe I can. I mean, I haven't been to Kenya for a long time, yeah, but I think that Kenya has loads to offer in terms of examples of the sustainable management of wash facilities in small towns, and also some of the work it's doing in semi-arid areas as well. So just as Ethiopia has lots of learning opportunity, so I believe does Kenya, especially around the mobilization of private sector as well. So as I said, I haven't been there recently, but I would say that for everything there is in Kenya, there is probably something of equivalent merit in Ethiopia and vice versa.
Thank you so much, Paul. And also in the area of regulation, Mr. Secretary, in the area of regulation, Kenya is in the regulation for the sector. Kenya is doing excellent work that can and should be shared, and there is interest for it in other parts of the continent and of the world. Yes, so I agree with you, Paul. Good. So thank you so much to everyone. The conversation now I see goes on the question that Barry was raising. So let's go into it in a separate webinar. And Sitali, since we are running out of time, I would like to thank again the two honorable ministers for their participation as well as the participation of all of you. Of course, we don't discriminate. We don't leave anyone behind. And I would immediately give the floor now to Sitali to start a second segment of this webinar. Thank you to everyone for your attention. Sitali, it's on you now.
Thank you so much, Katarina, and I will be quick. This part is just to offer the suggestions in terms of follow-up on the ministerial, on the sector ministers meeting. We've also thought that it would be good in some of these follow-up activities to continue with the focus on leave no one behind, and to continue with the momentum in terms of engagement with ministers, but also aiming to also engage with, say, heads of state in order to get more support for the sector. So there are 5 categories of suggestions in terms of activities going forward. That partners at country level or in different institutions, including in donor countries, that they continue to advocate at the highest level in terms of engaging with the decision makers in ministries as well as in other agencies that have a role in planning, in follow-up, in implementation, as well as in resource allocation. We also think that the second area of action could be on how to use the various analyses that happened before the sector ministers meeting, as well as the outcomes of the sector ministers meeting, how to use that in furthering plans and strategies which draw on that evidence that has already been discussed. We also suggest that there could be implementation and review of commitments that were tabled at the sector around the sector ministers meeting. We had about 47 countries table commitments, as well as 18 partners. So the process could continue in reviewing those commitments and improving them, as well as in reporting on progress at country level or at agency level. The fourth area of action is we recommend that leave no one behind is incorporated into sector processes, such as the joint sector review as a key area of discussion. If you're having a joint sector review, it might be worth having a component to discuss this issue, see the progress that's been made since the sector ministers meeting, and see what other additional aspects need to be made. We also would like to encourage our partners to document their experience and share that experience with us. We will have a series of webinars that we'll do between now and November, and that provides an opportunity to share these experiences. But we're also very keen to support these processes, such as what's happening with Ethiopia, Sierra Leone, potentially Pakistan, and others that might want to come together around one common topic. So those are also areas for peer-to-peer learning that we would be hoping that partners can take forward. In the next phase, we hope that partners can do a very quick plan of what actions you hope to take going forward. Some of those actions could include looking into the national budget process. If there's a budget discussion going on, a discussion on the medium-term expenditure framework, those are opportunities to include these aspects and take them forward. And so it would be good for partners, and this is not just government colleagues, it's a group of focal points in every country, but also in other agencies, even in bullet forms. What are those actions that partners might be taking forward on this issue, and leave no one behind specifically, but also incorporating that into other ongoing processes. And we think that that can help to develop a common understanding of what needs to be done, as well as just to further clarify some roles going forward. And then we are happy if there's a story and an interesting experience that needs to be shared, please share with us. We would be happy to engage with other countries or partners that might be of interest to your work. I will not go through these slides because I've talked about them in terms of what actions need to be done. Perhaps here just to mention that we encourage colleagues to organize a post-SMM ministerial dialogue in various countries to engage with the minister, such as the minister from Sierra Leone with his other colleagues, so that they could share this feedback. To mobilize all relevant stakeholders and include them in the process. Our colleagues at GLASS will be issuing the updated report somewhere in the fall, and that would be somewhere in September, I believe. That might be a good time to also look at what that data and evidence says, and also use that in further discussions. Perhaps here in terms of commitments, as I said, there were 47 countries that tabled commitments. This is a really good time to ask ourselves a few questions. One, whichever country you are in, it would be good to check whether your country tabled commitments, which institution within that government led the process and tabled commitments. Has your institution, if you're not a government institution, has your institution tabled commitments? If not, there is still time to do that. If the commitments were already tabled, in light of the discussions at the sector ministers meeting, do you think that those commitments need to be revised? They need to be reviewed to improve on their quality. So there are these steps that can be taken both by government actors as well as non-government actors. We also encourage, if once you update the commitments or once you make new commitments, please share those with us. There's a platform, an online platform, where new commitments can be updated. And these links will also be provided in the email after this conversation. There are 6 areas that we identified as major pitfalls in the commitments that were shared with us. Number 1, the time frame for some of the commitments was too short. The commitment is being tabled in April with a time frame of achievement of August or June in the same year, when that commitment seems to be a very hefty one. So please just look at the time frame in trying to make the commitments smart. Also look at whether your commitments are anchored in the National Development Plan. That's what we're encouraging, that these commitments should be linked with the National Development Plan, or they're not even aligned to the SDGs. The third challenge that we saw is that some of the commitments were not inclusive, maybe tabled only by one agency, and so there was no discussion with other actors. We're encouraging partners to really have these discussions and multi-stakeholder collaboration before finalizing the commitments. Some commitments were unrealistic. It seemed they were too ambitious, or they were not clear how they were going to be achieved, especially on the resourcing side. What financing is required to achieve those commitments, what human resource will be required to achieve the commitments, and has that been taken into consideration? Some commitments were incomplete or complex statements that in the end they seemed not to say so anything very clear. They were not specific in terms of what was going to be achieved. The last pitfall is mostly for partners that are not government partners. So there are some commitments from CSOs that are good, but some commitments from CSOs, research and learning agencies, private sector, external support agencies, most of those commitments from these agencies, they were just about support to the government and nothing about what these institutions will do internally to change their own practices. With the collaborative behaviors, for example, they're asking the collaborative behaviors call on partners to use national systems that have been developed by the governments. None of the partners were putting commitments that reflect on how they would move on that, on supporting or engaging and using national systems. Instead, most of those commitments were just about supporting governments to advocate or supporting governments to develop a plan. But we think that it is important for our partners to also look internally and see what changes can be made internally while they're also supporting the government. And then here, this is about linking with the national budget process that I've already mentioned, and then identifying and documenting experiences that I have also mentioned. Now we have a very quick exercise that we thought we can do, and we tried this with the Asia group that we had earlier, and we think that it's going to work. So let's try it. If you have a phone that's connected to the internet, we ask you to pull it up, or if you're using a laptop, please pull it up. We're going to do this. It's going to be participatory in the last few minutes that we have. And if you have any question to me, you could still also put it in the chat. So if you pull up your phone, or if you pull up your laptop or something, your gadget that's connected to the computer, type in, go to any web browser and type in www.menti.com. And this is a very quick exercise to just get a sense of where most of the actions, what most of the actions will be taken by partners. So if you type in menti.com, please type in, it will ask you for a code. And if you could put the code 702233. And there you will find the first question, which is basically asking you, in the next 2 months, that is you, you plan to do the following actions focused on leave no one behind. Is it one? So which one of these actions are you very likely to do? You could do all of them, and if you are going to do other activities, you can choose the last option. If you could just, if to the very right of that spectrum, what you see, that means you're most likely going to do that activity. For example, you're going to organize a high-level multi-stakeholder dialogue. So if you pick that up option, that would also be good. The code is 7022. Okay, so let's see if colleagues have started to do that. And I'll just share the screen so you could be able to see 702233. Okay, so I will show you the results. I will put them here as well so that you can be able to see them as we talk. Thank you for the input. We can see that coming, and let me know if you can see the results on the screen. Okay, thank you. So we're going to move now. So if you have indicated that you're going to do other types of activities, and you can continue to input there. So I'll just move to the next slide. So this is just a quick question. List any additional actions you plan to undertake as a follow-up to the SMM. Also, here you can add the name of your institution, just so we can get a sense of what you're planning to do in terms of actions. It might be organizing a ministerial dialogue. It might be having a conversation with your head of agency. It might be relooking at using the joint sector review. So if you could just also type in your responses there. And if you could, please do not forget to add the name of your institution. Okay, so we're going to move to the next slide. Let me just see if there's any input here in terms of additional actions. Yes, we have received new input. Analysis of vulnerability and unsaved people. So that's good to know, and it would be good to know where this will happen. Is it in a country? Is it a partner that is intending to do that? And it's good to know if this has not happened, because this also came up very strongly at the SMM, and the use of data in that process as being very critical. Okay, we shared the sector ministers meeting report. Thanks for that. Shared the sector working group, the sector ministers meeting report. All right, thank you. So I think we'll definitely make that report available as soon as possible. Okay, Barry, just saw your point. Let me go through it very quickly. Participate in discussion on leave no one behind and strategies. Okay, thank you so much, Barry. I'm preparing a concept note to fund. That one just disappeared. I will read it again. I'm preparing a concept note to fund the secretariat. We'll share Friday. Oh, interesting. Interesting. Thank you. I hope I read that correctly. So I will move to the final one, so we can close. But if you have further input, please do that. Now, given the actions that you have identified that you want to take, what support would you like from either the Secretariat or other partners? This is also an additional question. I would like you to just put the name of your institution. If you need support from other partners, we'll be happy to reach out to them and see if we can broker that relationship. But if you think there's also support we can give from the Secretariat, just put it here, and then we'll navigate through it and let you know what we can do. So I'm unable to see the chat because if I move, then you won't be able to see the input that we're receiving. But this is the last slide on this, and then I will hand back to Katarina for closure.
Sitali, do you want me to close right now, or do we wait a little bit until there is more? I don't understand now. There are no. If I'm wondering if people are still voting and commenting, etc., but I don't think so.
So I think you could start to make the remarks, and if there are comments that come in through here, I will let you know. But it just takes a bit of time for people to type.
Okay.
But thank you so much. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sitali. We learned about this Mentimeter in our retreat. We used it for the first time in our Secretariat retreat, and I guess that we all became very excited about it. And I think it's in the webinar. I think it even works better than it did in the retreat. I think it's very exciting to see everyone in action. So my final remarks before we close, it's to thank you all for your participation and engagement and the comments and the interventions. I think this has been an excellent webinar, and I am truly grateful to everyone for your time and your contributions to the discussions. To the ministers, thank you so much for your leadership, for your commitment, for your efforts, and for your generosity in sharing your time and your ideas and also reflections with us. We know that collectively we have a great deal to get done, and working together I think is the only way we can continue to make significant progress towards putting the furthest behind first and leaving no one behind. So thank you so much to all of you, and I am pleased and happy to close the webinar. Thank you so much to everyone.
Thank you so much, everyone. Juste pour expliquer à nos collègues francophones, on va commencer tout de suite le webinaire en français. Merci beaucoup.
Allô?
Allô, bonjour.
Bonjour.
Allô, bonjour.
Bonjour, c'est
Bonjour. Vous nous entendez bien?
Ok, d'accord. Je m'appelle Sitali. On va commencer dans 3 minutes. Vous êtes d'où? Vous venez d'où?
De Madagascar avec le ministre de l'Énergie, de l'eau et de l'hydrocarbures.
Ok. Merci beaucoup. On va commencer dans 2 minutes. On vient de finir l'autre webinaire qui était en français. Non, qui était en anglais.
Ok, Sitali.
Merci, Sophie. Merci aussi à nos collègues à Madagascar. Balwant, can you hear us? Balwant, can you hear us?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Balwant? Balwant?
Allô, Sitali?
Allô?
Allô?
Mugabe, ça va?
Très bien, comment tu vas?
Ça va très bien, merci. Et toi?
Ça va, je suis avec le directeur André, donc nous, on vous écoute très bien et on est connecté.
Ok, d'accord, très bien. On va essayer encore de savoir si la connexion avec... c'est la connexion. Avec Balwant, si ça marche. La connexion, ok. Merci. Balwant, tu es là? Allô, Balwant, tu es là? Balwant?
Je pense pas qu'il soit connecté.
Ok. Donne-moi une minute, je veux lui appeler par téléphone. Je lui appellerai par téléphone. Hello? Eloise?
Hello, oui, bonjour.
Perfect. We can hear you now.
Ah, c'est Ali. OK. Alors, Monsieur le ministre, merci beaucoup. Vous étiez la première personne à répondre sur ce webinaire. Nous sommes vraiment très heureux de vous avoir parmi nous. Et maintenant, je pense qu'on peut commencer si tout le monde est d'accord. C'est Ali, nous allons commencer le webinaire.